All right, welcome everybody to today's webinar on top school-related concerns for students and parents. My name is Monica Marusceac, and I'm going to be conducting this webinar. And I want to draw your attention for a moment to the quote there at the bottom by Milton Erickson, Dr. Milton Erickson, the preeminent psychiatrist who really put hypnosis and neurolinguistic programming on the map. And Dr. Erickson says that you use hypnosis not as a cure, but as a means of establishing a favorable climate in which to learn. And that basically underscores the message in this webinar that hypnosis and NLP are really not not ends in and of themselves, but rather they're tools, they're means for parents and educators and for us as providers to use to help our kids and even help ourselves create a favorable climate in our own mind to learn faster, to learn more efficiently, and to learn more thoroughly. And I'm going to be covering hypnosis and NLP, neurolinguistic programming, in detail. But first, I'd just like to share a couple of details about myself. And the only reason I'm taking the time to share these details about myself is that I want to show you, to emphasize that I am no stranger to a high-performance lifestyle or stress. So my background is that I attended Cornell University back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And after graduating from Cornell, I went on to the United States Marine Corps, where I flew the Harrier jet. It is a pretty cool airplane. It is one of the most difficult airplanes to fly. And the reason for that is that it's an aircraft that can take off and land in any configuration. It can take off and land like a helicopter vertically. It can take off and land like a traditional conventional jet aircraft, or it can take off and land any airspeed in between. And because of that dynamic performance, it is actually one of the most difficult airplanes to fly. You can see me there in the upper right-hand corner. I was flying over the country of Iraq back in 2007 in that photo, and that is a selfie. Yes, indeed, that is a selfie in the cockpit. And after I left the Marine Corps with the purpose of helping people, coaching people, adults and children, I founded Peak Performance Associates, LLC. And the purpose of this business venture is to spread the word about the power of our own mind. And too often people tell themselves stories that are simply not true. In other words, they tell themselves stories that are disempowering, that are unresourceful. And so through the work that we do here at Peak Performance Associates, we help people to change their story. We help people to use their mind and really go beyond the cognitive processes to use the deeper processes of imagination and creative subconscious to change the story they tell themselves and unlock their full potential. I still fly. I'm an airshow demo pilot with Knowles Aviation. I'm still in the United States Marine Corps Reserves as an officer and pilot. And my certifications involve neurolinguistic programming. I'm a master NLP practitioner, and hypnotherapy. I'm a board certified hypnotist. And I use my experience as a pilot, my experience attending one of the most difficult universities in the country, and my training together to help people unlock their full potential. And so the rules of engagement, so to speak, for this program, for this webinar, is feel free to stop me and ask questions as they come up, but permit me to defer answering questions which may require a more detailed answer towards the end, because there's a very high likelihood that the answer will be forthcoming in the follow-on slides, but I will take note of that question and be sure to answer it at the end. And if something doesn't make sense or I've glossed over something too quickly, because I don't want to assume that everybody here on the call is starting completely new, please feel free to stop me and I'll clarify, I'll back up, and I'll go in more detail if necessary. All right, so here's the overview for today's webinar. Top 5 concerns of today's students. Now, I did go to a very stressful and challenging high school. I went to a high school in Manhattan, a math and science school called Stuyvesant High School. And it was a fantastic experience, but I know firsthand how stressful school can be for those students who are high achievers. And given our location here in Northern Virginia, I know that a lot of students, the majority of students, have very high expectations placed on themselves, whether expectations they place on themselves or expectations placed on them by their teachers and their family, which makes perfect sense because we want our kids to succeed. We want them to live up to their fullest potential. And while that's great, it's all about managing expectations and managing stress. And so we're going to cover stress in detail, and we're going to cover the follow-on conditions that can affect students as a result of unmitigated stress, namely testing anxiety, exhaustion, and how homework contributes to those two states. And the worst of all, kind of the worst end, would be fear of going to school, and I have seen that. After we cover those, we're going to go into a little bit of detail about what exactly hypnosis is and what neurolinguistic programming is, and how they can help our students and ourselves unlock their fullest potential. We're going to describe the outcomes from a typical session. We're going to talk about the process, and we're going to go into some detail about the benefits to students. Why is this more beneficial, say, than just tutoring? Or why is this more beneficial than, say, psychotherapy, traditional talk therapy? And lastly, we're going to cover some techniques for how parents can help their children. We're going to provide the references for our data, and we're going to save some time at the end for question and answer. All right, so stress. Stress is all in the head. What is stressful to one person may not be stressful to someone else. And so really our greatest weapon against stress is our ability to choose one thought over another. So what typically leads to the downward spiral of stress is the meaning that we give to events in our lives. So while one person may give an event or a situation a certain meaning that is negative and perhaps gives them the experience of negative stress, another person in that same situation experiencing that same event may be giving a completely different meaning to that situation or event, leading to them not experiencing negative stress, but rather maybe they have a positive experience. So it's all about the meaning, which meaning is dictated by our thoughts. It's all about the meaning that we give to the events in our lives that leads us to increase stress, experience increased stress, or to experience no stress or low stress. And it seems that students give a lot of negative meaning to school and school-related activities. The American Psychological Association states that school is the biggest source of stress for teens, and they feel an inordinate amount of pressure to perform well, whether it's in academics or their sporting events. So on the one hand, it's great that students take school and their extracurricular activities seriously, but on the other hand, we don't want them to live in a perpetual state of stress, which is what they are experiencing. Another survey by the APA found that average teen stress levels are 6 out of 10 when school's in session, and almost 5 out of 10 even during the summer, when in theory kids should be relaxing, be replenishing their stores so that they can approach the new academic year refreshed, and that doesn't seem to be happening. And probably what it is that teens haven't learned how to manage their stress. They haven't learned how to avoid sweating the small stuff. They perceive that every test, every quiz, every homework assignment to some extent is the end-all be-all, and that can lead them into a downward spiral of meaning where they give an unnecessarily negative meaning to every event and every test and every quiz. And as a result of this increased stress, teens are irritable, they're angry, and they're anxious. And I'm sure if you think back to your interaction with your teens, a lot of the altercations that parents experience with their teens undoubtedly can be attributed to stress. So think back for a moment to the last argument you had with your teen. Think back to the circumstances surrounding that argument. Was it, a pleasant sunny day where everyone was having fun and everyone was relaxed, or was there an element of pressure? Was there pressure to be efficient involved in the argument? Was there pressure to be to stop procrastinating, perhaps? Usually, arguments are the result of misunderstandings. Misunderstandings are the result of underestimating or overestimating the level of consciousness that the person we're speaking with is coming from. So parents assume often that their kids, their teens, are coming from the same level of consciousness that they are, that they see things through the same lenses. And without a doubt, I've been guilty of this myself, it is this misperception that our kids, our teens, are viewing the same situation through the same lens as us that causes the misunderstandings. And the bottom line is that kids and teens don't have the same resources that we do, but they can learn. They can learn how to manage stress. They can learn how to change the meaning that they give to the events and the circumstances in their academic life, in their personal life, in their social life. And it is this process of learning that's going to allow them, it's going to give them the tools and methods that they need to properly cope with stress during their adolescence and into their adulthood. Because as you can see there, experts warn and emphasize the importance of teens learning positive coping techniques, because these will follow them into adulthood and will affect them in the short term and the long term. And the more that we can teach our kids how to manage stress in a healthy way, the more well-equipped and more successful they'll be as adults. Now, the challenge is, sometimes us as adults, we don't have healthy coping mechanisms for stress. We may bottle up stress. We may compartmentalize stress. We may cope with stress using alcohol, right? That glass of wine at the end of the day, yes, it probably tastes good, but at the same time, it's probably a bit of a pressure relief valve for those of us over 21 on the call. So what are we teaching our kids? What are we teaching our teens? Obviously, they're learning Spanish, and they're learning algebra and calculus, and they're learning physics and chemistry, but are they learning those life skills that they need in order to succeed? And often I've seen parents in this area invest in their adolescents' study skills training. So obviously executive function is huge, and kids need to learn how to study better, how to organize their time, how to set up reminders so that they do things on time and they deliver material on time. But in the same moment, how are we teaching our kids how to think? Are we teaching them how to think about stress? Are we teaching them how to think and how to feel good about what they're doing? Because there's only so much willpower that a person has. Willpower is like a muscle. It does get stronger the more you use it, but it also does wear out. So in the long term, willpower gets stronger the more you use it, but in the short term, willpower actually wears out over the course of a day. And I need to find that study, but I know that there is a study that was done at a university on the subject of willpower, and what they found is that students who had to utilize their willpower had less of it later when presented with another challenge. Meanwhile, another group of students who did not have to utilize their willpower, but rather they utilized their feelings, their imagination, their creativity in a certain situation, had more willpower left over, had a greater reserve of willpower to leverage at a later point in time when they were faced with a complex problem. So willpower and discipline are always things that we should emphasize to our children, and we should encourage them to develop. However, we need to moderate that and to inject the use of imagination, creativity, help our children be pulled towards something by helping them understand and appreciate and connect with the benefits associated with it rather than just using willpower. Because when there's too much willpower involved, when there's too much stress involved, anxiety becomes the norm, the new norm. And we find that kids, that adults as well, tend to worry. And this worrying can get exacerbated. It can snowball, and it can result especially in testing anxiety, which 16 to 20% of students actually report experiencing high testing anxiety. And this can result in blanking during a test, reduction in memory, confusion during the exam, and ultimately lower test scores, which nobody wants. So in other words, the pressure can become counterproductive. And this continual state of anxiety, and 80% of teens already don't get enough sleep. In fact, the American Academy of Pediatrics has recommended that school classes start later and later, not just because of the pressure of school, but to accommodate students' natural circadian rhythms, which we now know are different from adults and different from kids. So exhaustion, coupled with a mountain of homework, means that students experience stomach and gut-related issues such as irritable bowel syndrome, increased anxiety, and they can even gain weight. So all of this combined can ultimately lead our kids to fear going to school. And I actually had an experience of that. We saw a young man, I think he was a junior or senior in high school, and he had a paralyzing fear of going to school. He still went, but he was unable to function at the high level that his mom knew he was capable of. And his mom had taken him to psychologists. His mom had taken him to psychiatrists. The mom was incredibly thorough, methodical, and was really trying to do the best she could for her son. And it really wasn't until he learned how to manage his emotional state. It really wasn't until he learned how to manage his mental state, his thoughts, that he was able to finally release himself from the fear of going to school and give himself the mental white space and the emotional white space to enjoy his classes and to enjoy his work. And so once he mastered his mental and emotional state, he was actually able to stop using and leaning on willpower and discipline to get his work done, but it became a joy. It became a pleasure to be in class, to be with his friends, because he had even lost his interest in going out for social events. That was really what caused his mother concern and caused her to bring him to us. So yes, unmitigated anxiety and stress will lead kids to miss school, either because they're cutting class or because they really actually make themselves sick. They develop stomach problems. They develop chronic pain. They develop other stress-related issues, rashes or hives, breathing difficulties. Asthma can often be exacerbated or even brought on by stress, all of which again snowball and spiral out of control and can result in kids missing school, which then leads to lower confidence because they're not doing as well as they could because of their poor academic achievement from testing anxiety and whatnot. And 1 to 5% of teens actually do experience a certain level of fear of going to school. And that really does not have to be that way. I think in this area specifically, stress can often be worn as a badge of honor, but it's really not. It's really a sign of mismanagement of resources. And when you think about it, everything is resources. Time, of course, is a resource. Money is obviously a resource. But so much that is intangible is a resource as well. So I already talked about one resource, which is willpower. Willpower is a finite resource. We can acquire more of it through practice and discipline, but it's not a bottomless well of willpower. It's something we have to replenish. And I remember when I was in the Marine Corps, I was in a flight school actually. It was the fixed wing jet training pipeline. And in the Marine Corps, in training, we have what are called senior Marines. And the senior Marine is an officer who's more senior than the students, obviously. And he kind of keeps track of the Marines who are in a Navy school, because the Navy is the Department of Defense that actually provides the training for the Marine aviators. And this senior Marine, he was talking about how so many people wear stress as a badge of honor, and they feel that the more they study and the more they chair fly and the more they stress out about their flights, the quote-unquote better students they are, the better aviators they are. And he sat me down. This was the in brief or in call with him. And this gentleman said, you know, Moose was my call sign, you know, Moose, stress is not a sign of honor. It's not a badge of honor. It's not a sign that you're a better pilot. It's not a sign that you're a better aviator. If anything, it's a sign that you don't know what you're doing. And I want you to take notes, and I want you to figure out what you need in order to be successful without spending every minute studying, without spending every minute chair flying. You can do this more easily than you think, he said to me. And I remember seeing him very, very clearly sitting across from me with his green flight suit and his laptop computer there open to his left. And he was looking at me so intently and emphasizing that stress is not a badge of honor, but rather it's a sign that I'm actually not aware of what I'm doing and I need to find a better way. And that's really what we help people do with hypnosis and NLP. And hypnosis is such a misunderstood concept, but really it's just a state of focused concentration. People go into hypnosis all the time on their own, and most of the time they don't even realize it. In fact, we call it by different words, by different names. We'll call self-hypnosis daydreaming, being in a state of flow, being in the zone, zoning out. All of these are euphemisms for hypnosis. In fact, a meditative state is really nothing more than self-hypnosis in a more general sense. What separates hypnosis from meditation, however, is that the suggestions that are being introduced while the person is in that meditative state are aligned with their desired outcome. So while meditation is a general concept of focusing one's attention on something to keep themselves in the present moment, hypnosis is that same meditative state, that same focused concentration, where the person is receptive to suggestions, is receptive to ideas, with the purpose of achieving something, of making a change, of feeling differently, of reframing the past, whatever it might be. And neurolinguistic programming is really what we'd call waking hypnosis. If you've ever watched a public speaker with such intensity that he absolutely mesmerized you, that individual, I promise you, practiced NLP. In other words, that public speaker used a collection of language patterns that allowed him or her to influence others, to persuade them to agree with what he was saying, he or she was saying. And so if you think back to the last time you heard someone speak persuasively, or someone speak in a very fascinating way where you were just drawn in, whether it's a TED Talk speaker or just a really good speaker at your child's school, whatever the case may be, that individual was using the neuro-linguistic programming techniques that we use in our practice to help people open up to what it is that they really want, and also to understand what it is that they really want. And so when it comes to those 5 issues that I listed earlier, stress, testing anxiety, exhaustion, homework, and fears in general, hypnosis and NLP help through 2 global concepts, the meta pattern and meta programs. So I'll go into detail on those 2 topics in a moment. But bottom line, hypnosis and NLP help the students or the parents or whoever's in our office get really clear on what they want. And after they get really clear on what they want, we help them to imagine, to pretend, to create a new reality for themselves that is so vivid and so vibrant that it becomes accessible to them in a way that it wasn't if they were just thinking about it, if they were just talking about it with a psychotherapist or with their friends or family members. So by bypassing the cognitive portion of the brain, by accessing the deeper, the subconscious, that creative imagination, we're able to help people create a visceral connection with what they want in a way that they can't just using words in the cognitive brain. And so that's the meta pattern in a nutshell. We help people to take a present state, a problem, and we invite them to associate into the problem. We invite them to tell us what's wrong, why something's not working, what it is that they need help with. Then we have them disassociate from that problem, or break state is another way that we talk about it, another way that we use it. Then we have the person associate into a positive state. We ask people questions that stimulate their imagination, that cause them to create the situation, to see the situation as they would like for it to be. And we don't just invite them to see it as they would like it to be. We invite them to make it vivid, really see it through their own eyes, make it so vibrant that it is as though they were there, with the problem resolved, with the situation as they would like it to be. And then we take those 2 states, the problem state and the resource state, and we collapse them. We bring them together. We take that resource, we make it more powerful, more vibrant than the problem. And so in the person's mind, in the person's imagination, they come together and the resourceful state takes over. Now, obviously, I'm oversimplifying the meta pattern significantly. But if I were to describe it in simple words, it would be we help people to see the problem as it really is, and then we help them to imagine it as they want it to be, and then we help them to make it that way, make it the way they want it to be, using their subconscious, using their imagination. So I use the word subconscious and imagination interchangeably because they basically are the same thing. Anytime we're imagining something, anytime we're creating something with our mind, we're actually leveraging our subconscious. So the meta pattern helps people to understand the problem, to imagine the solution, and to make the solution much, much, much more powerful so that it takes over and the person now has a new way of thinking, a new way of behaving, a new way of speaking, etc. And the way that we connect with people in our office, the way we help people is we use what are called meta programs as well, in addition to the meta pattern. Meta programs is unique to each person. So everything we do in our office is customized to the person who's sitting in front of us. And as I'm sure you can all agree, different things motivate different people. Different people see the world through different lenses. So everything we say is uniquely tailored to the programming that that person already has. Some people are naturally more detail-oriented, for example. So if I talk to someone in a very global way, I'm not going to connect with that person very well. And they're not going to receive my suggestion very openly because I'm not communicating to them in a specific and detailed enough fashion. Some people are very ordered. Information needs to be presented to them in a very orderly way. If I communicate to those people using random concepts that are connected, but they're not presented in a specific way, I may not communicate very well with those people who prefer order. Some people love to move toward things. They love to move toward experiences. They're pulled in the direction of what they want. They pursue pleasure. Rather, other people prefer to move away from things. They want to avoid pain, or they want to avoid disappointment. And that is the lens that they see the world through. So if I'm talking to someone and all that I can emphasize is the benefit, the reason why they should think differently or speak differently, etc., and all I'm emphasizing is the benefit to someone who prefers to move away from things, obviously I'm not going to connect with that person very well, because they want to know what they have to be afraid of. They want to know what they need to avoid, what they'll stand to distance themselves from if they make these changes. So by using a combination of these unique lenses that people see the world through, this meta programming, and then speaking in such a way that we help people, we're able to help people associate and disassociate and create a new reality using the meta pattern. And so this might sound like two similar concepts, but they're actually supporting elements. The speaking through a meta program that is specific to one person allows them to be more open to the meta pattern and allows them to make that change more quickly. Through the process of the meta pattern and meta programming, we introduce specific techniques such as anchors, breathing techniques, self-talk. We teach people how to guide themselves into self-hypnosis. We teach people how to chunk up or chunk down tasks so that they're not as overwhelmed by what it is that they're about to do. And we help people, students in this case, really learn to enjoy associating into a positive frame of mind. Again, these are things that are not taught anywhere. They're not taught in schools, they're not taught in clubs, and there are few, if any, after-school activities that teach these resources to help kids and parents learn how to think differently. So the process. Really, we operate from an outcome orientation. When we see clients, whether students or adults, we emphasize concrete outcomes that we establish together, jointly. Us as the provider and the client at the beginning of the session. In fact, we actually establish the concrete outcomes, the goals, during an initial assessment that we do for every single one of the clients that comes to us. We utilize NLP before and during the actual hypnosis process. And the NLP, what it does is it encourages the client to see things more differently before we even begin the actual hypnosis process. Once the person is hypnotized, their subconscious is more receptive to suggestions and ideas, but they are still consciously aware of what is going on. So I've had situations with clients where to the outside observer, the client was asleep. in other words, not conscious, not aware, not aware at all of what's going on. However, for one client one time who appeared to be that out of it, I used the wrong name, if you can believe it. This was very early on in my career. It's something that I tell this story because I want to emphasize how clients, when in hypnosis, are very, very aware of what is going on, even though they don't look like it. And so I used the wrong name of this person. And it wasn't just the wrong name, but the name was actually the name of someone that they very much disliked, someone who had offended them, insulted them, someone who this person, for all intents and purposes, considered an enemy. And so you would think, I'm just saying words and the person's perhaps asleep, they're not aware of what's going on. Quite the contrary. This person immediately opened their eyes, immediately sat bolt upright, and proceeded to take me to task on why it is I use that name when it was this person who they absolutely abhorred and couldn't stand, and so on and so forth. And that was a great reminder, great illustration to me that our clients know exactly what's going on. They hear opening and closing in the office. They can tell if I'm moving around, grabbing a drink of water, whatever the case may be. It's just that if you think about it, even when we're conscious and we're having a conversation with someone and we're listening intently, we only remember maybe 50%, for example, of what someone is saying during that normal conversation. So when a client is in hypnosis, they're going to remember about the same amount. They're going to remember about 50% of what it is that I said. They're going to remember about 50% of the sounds in the room. It's really just the fact that they're choosing not to be distracted by the sounds in the room or an incorrect word that I may have said. And they allow themselves to continue in that state of flow, that state of being in the zone. And that choice to remain in the zone allows clients to really associate into positive or negative emotional states more easily. And every suggestion that we make, whether it's to imagine something positive or imagine something negative, is for therapeutic purposes. And everything that we say is aligned with what the client has decided at the outset is their desired outcome. Throughout the hypnosis process, we use what are called testers and convincers, which are techniques specific to the process that allow us to know whether a person is in hypnosis. And it also shows the client that they are indeed hypnotized. They're not just asleep, or they're not awake in a conscious state either. And that these techniques are peppered throughout the session in order to create a sense of certainty for the provider and for the client that this process really is working. This indeed is something that is going to give them the change that they desire. So when we're done with a typical session, the person is very relaxed. That's one of the classic outcomes. We stimulate the relaxation response. They walk away feeling better, breathing more easily, mind is more focused, anxiety levels have fallen, they're able to focus their attention on what they need to do, their desired outcomes are very clearly positioned in their mind's eye, so their people are more likely to take action after a typical hypnosis session. They experience past experiences don't bother people as much as they used to, if they even remember them. Clients are better able to visualize hopefulness, positive future outcomes, and they're able to just associate into positive mental and emotional states more easily, whether without even trying, which is often the case, or by utilizing the tools and techniques that we introduced during the session. For example, anchors or self-hypnosis. All right. So what are the benefits to students, basically? It gives students powerful tools to utilize in the blink of an eye or at the snap of their finger, and to change their state from potentially a negative one to a positive one. So for example, in the case of testing anxiety, let's say a student has a trigger that as soon as they walk in the door of the classroom in which they're about to take a test, their anxiety level goes to the roof. And maybe it was because of something a teacher said at one time, or maybe it's because of a comment another student made at one time. But in our case, it doesn't really matter. We give that student the tools that he needs, for example, an anchor, a specific anchor that allows him to focus his mind, to change the anxiety, which is negative anticipation, to excitement, which is positive anticipation, and it allows him to block out all distractions. So there's one tool, an anchor, utilized as soon as the student walks into the classroom, has the ability to shift the student's focus from negative anticipation to positive, to change his focus and improve it, and also to put himself in the right emotional state so that he can sustain that test taking mindset for the entire duration of the test. Another thing that we do, which is much deeper than just introducing anchors, is we help clients rewrite their story. So what I've learned from working with students is that a lot of students come to us with stories that are disempowering. I'll hear students say things like, oh, I'm just not smart at math, or I just can't study well, or I'm a procrastinator. All of these are examples of stories that students tell themselves. And often, students and adults are very attached to their stories, even though they know that these stories are not helpful and these stories are not going to help them be better students or get better grades. For whatever reason, it's become part of their identity. So throughout this process, whether it's 3 sessions, 5 sessions, or 10, we help students, clients, to rewrite their story, to really divorce that old story and create a new one. And not just create it, but associate into it. Make it their own. Make that their new norm. And that's why, in our practice at least, we never see clients for just 1 session. We always see clients for usually minimum of 3 or 4, but usually more like 6 to 8. Because we want to take that story and make it a reality, and that typically doesn't happen in 1.5 hour session. What hypnosis allows us to do is really accelerate results. So what I tell everybody that walks into our office is you can do what you're about to do with me on your own. The question is, how long is it going to take you? And are you sure that you're going to be able to take yourself there? Now, while we can't guarantee results, what we can guarantee is that we can help the person get to their goal more quickly than they could help themselves. So, for example, if you've ever worked with a trainer or with a coach, I'm sure everyone will agree that a swimmer, for example, can train themselves to swim faster and faster. However, how much faster do they become when they work with a coach, with someone who's watching them, watching each stroke, watching each movement, listening to the words that the athlete is saying to himself or herself? That's what a coach does. And because of the powers of observation and the techniques that the coach uses, the athlete becomes better faster. The athlete becomes more focused. The athlete changes maybe the self-talk that he or she participates in. And none of that could have been done without the coach. So you can think of the work that we do as coaching. It's just that we use NLP and hypnosis during the coaching process in order to get even more accelerated results. And actually, we have a lot of coaches who take our neuro-linguistic programming NLP certification courses because NLP is such a useful tool when communicating with kids or communicating with other athletes in general. And that's really how you can help. Really, parents can help by changing the way they speak to their kids. Parents tools and resources that their kids are learning and layering those two approaches one on top of the other. So as the student learns how to use anchors, and as the student learns how to change his or her language patterns, and as the student learns how to master their own mental and emotional state, it's extremely helpful for the parents to understand and to use the same benefits themselves, to use anchors to master their own mental and emotional states before talking to their kids, to learn NLP, maybe not all NLP techniques, but some select few NLP techniques are very useful for parents to know so that when they communicate to their children, they're not undermining the work that we've done in the office. So we will bring parents into the room sometimes. So while we do all of our sessions with our students one-on-one, just the student and the provider, towards the end of the program, towards the end of the series of sessions, we will also invite the parents in to begin to close the loop on this process so that the parents are using the same techniques and are reinforcing what the students are learning in the hypnosis sessions. They themselves can continue the benefits at home. And so here are our references. I'm happy to send this PowerPoint presentation to anyone who's interested in copying down those references or presenting this presentation to someone else, to a school or whatever the case may be. All you have to do is email me at monica@novahypnosisandwellness.com. The "and" is spelled out, A-N-D, and I'd be happy to send you this presentation. You can use all the information in it. If you want to take my logo off and put your own logo, that's fine. I don't look at this as my proprietary and intellectual property. Now, if anybody has any questions, I know I went through this in great detail. I'm happy to take them now. Let's see. Let's look at our chat and see what we've got for questions. All right. So Marcy is asking, what if we want to be in the room with our child during the sessions? Can we be? So Marcy, we have allowed parents to be in the room with our students. However, what we've found without fail is that the students are less open, they're less receptive, they're more anxious when the parent is in the room. Now, that's not applicable for very, very young students. So we have seen students as young as 6, and obviously we've worked with kids into young adulthood, 19, 20, 21, and so on. With the younger kids, the parent's presence is usually a benefit. It relaxes the child. It helps them to, let go of any worry or any nervousness. But with teenagers, what we've found is that the teenagers often have something to say that is negative about the parent. We are all parents ourselves as providers, and so we don't take that, literally. We just kind of roll with it. But for the student, for the teenager, that's their reality, and they need to be able to express that openly without worrying that their parents are going to be upset with them. So for that reason, that being the primary reason, we discourage parents from being in the room. And usually after one session where the parent is in the room, they realize that their kid's holding back, and given that they've already made a big investment in this program for their son or daughter, they see the benefit of stepping out of the room and allowing their teenager to be with us in private, because it's going to give them the outcome that they want versus, by being in the room, they're actually going to have the counter effect. All right, great. So let's see, what other questions do we have? So someone is asking, can we guarantee results? So no, we really cannot guarantee results, because just as an example, if you think to any professional service that a person receives, whether it's dental work or a massage or legal services, no provider of services can guarantee any results. I mean, even something as simple as a massage. The massage therapist can promise professional service, a clean environment, paying attention to your needs and your wants, asking you if the pressure is good, just as an example. But the massage therapist cannot guarantee that all of your knots will be released. The massage therapist cannot promise that or guarantee that the lower back pain will go away. Yet we still get massages. We enjoy the process. We accept that the person's going to do the best job that they can do, and then we kind of let it go. We're like, okay, they did the best that they can. I enjoyed it, or I didn't enjoy it, whatever the case may be, and you make your decision from there. Same thing with legal services, for example, right? A lawyer cannot promise that he or she will win the case. Same thing with medical care or dental care. The medical or dental provider can promise that they've had all the training required, that they have all the experience that they need, that they're going to conduct their services in a professional way. But at the end of the day, the surgeon can't guarantee that the knee pain is going to go away after he or she does an arthroscopy. And the same goes for us. We guarantee professional services performed with integrity. We guarantee satisfaction in that regard, and we go above and beyond, exercising every technique in the book to help our clients meet their goals. At the end of the day, the person is in charge, though. Our client is the boss, and we have had clients who absolutely were so attached to their story and were so attached to being in pain, or to being the underdog, or to being the their unhappiness it was very important to them to remain unhappy, that while we did make some progress, we didn't make as much as we would have liked. And so I'm sure everyone on the call can imagine someone in their life who is like that, maybe an aunt or an uncle who you just wish that they would let go of their need to be unhappy, or you wish that they would let go of their need to be the underdog, for example. Well, those are also the people who we come in contact with as well. Very few. I think people in general want to succeed. They want to realize their fullest potential, but there are people out there, and we do our best, and we leave the rest up to the universe, if you will. Okay, so with that, we are out of time. It is after the hour, and so I want to thank everyone for being on the call. I really want to thank everyone for taking the time to be with me to learn about the top 5 concerns for students and parents. Feel free to email me at monica@novahypnosisandwellness.com if you have any further questions. And with that, I thank you. I look forward to seeing some of you in our office. I look forward to reading your emails, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. Take care now. Bye-bye.